chess-based server and good evening all following on livestream.com. Just adjusting the board. I'm hoping the board is the board okay on those on livestream. Can everyone still hear me? Sound still there? Is the sound still there? Sound is gone. Sound is fine. Okay. Toshin, just press play on chess play. Press play. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I thought we'd have a break from Tau this week. I've got a tournament coming up soon. I'm quite excited. I'm probably going to lose sleep before the tournament as well as during the tournament when I lose horribly, as I expect I will. It's the London Chess Classic. If any of you want to get a FIDE rating and you're in the UK, or even if you're nearby the UK, I think the London Chess Classic is a fantastic tournament. Some of the strongest players in the world will be playing in the Elite Classic. Carlsen's visiting, Kramnik, Aronian, and you're going to have 4 of the top British players, Anand. So there's like 4 players over like 2,800 and over, and I'm going to see them on Saturday, and that explains why next Tuesday there's no broadcast from me because I'll be playing in the London Chess Classic. So apologies in advance for next week. There's no live stream next week. I'm probably going to be completely exhausted. Last year I reached a period of exhaustion. I was accepting some draws. Just, I don't know. I'm hoping to have more energy this time and try and do better than last year. But it's a tough tournament. Some people are underrated. Anyway, I thought this week we could have a look at some decisive games from the recent 2 World Championships. So there was the Computer World Championship, and before that the Women's World Championship, which so far I did not do on YouTube. I sort of was focusing on the Tau Memorial tournaments, which was a sort of clash at the same time. Now I like actually looking at decisive games. It's a personal preference to look at games where someone won. I know that's probably a little bit childish, but between the World Computer Championship and the Women's Championship, we've got 6 decisive games which I've picked out. So in the Women's World Championship, here is one of them. I think this was in round 2. So in round 2, Koneru Humpy was playing Yifan Hou, and I probably butchered the pronunciation as usual. So anyway, Humpy playing white. Maybe I shouldn't use surname. Koneru. Okay, so she played d4, and the Chinese champion, I think reigning, isn't she the current Women's World Champion already? She responded with e6. So e6 is actually quite a neat move against d4. If you're struggling what to do against d4, just play e6. It sort of invites a French defence. If you play the French defence and white plays e4, you've invited the French defence. But also it's still got the options of maybe a Dutch defence if white doesn't play anything too aggressive, and you avoid something like the Staunton Gambit. So it's got some perks to play e6 actually, and it's a move I often forget as an option to d4, that you can play e6. You don't always have to play knight f6 or d5 to d4. You can play other moves, and e6 is an important one. I don't know about you guys if you've ever considered that, playing e6 to 1d4. So anyway, white played c4, so going into Queen's Gambit type positions. After knight f6, we have here, after knight f3, d5, a sort of classical, occupation by both sides of the centre knight c3, and now we have a kind of hybrid injection of the Nimzo Indian here with bishop b4. So what was going to be, it seemed, a queen's gambit declined, is now a kind of possible Nimzo Indian position. So white exchanged on d5, ed, and played bishop g5. Okay, so Yifan, she played h6, kicking the bishop. Okay, and now black played c5, and white reinforced the d4 point with e3. So white's position looks good, and now usually I would have thought this next move is strategic disaster. I wonder if you can guess what black played here. If I give you 10 seconds, can you guess what black played here? So 10 seconds starting from now. If you're on the ChessBase server, please try and hide the score sheet. I think you can click on the openings book. I've got permission to do live stream for my particular broadcasts. I'm missed, by the way. So anyway, I basically I would have thought this is releasing the tension of the position, but strangely it was played. So anyone guessing what black's move is here? I just thought it was weird looking at this. Can anyone guess? Any guesses at all? Should I just play it? Okay, I'll just play it. So c4. Now I thought it releases the tension because, you know, what about this pressure on d4? But I suppose black wants to avoid d to c and this isolated queen's pawn. It does hem in the bishop, and there is a sort of majority of pawns over here. So potentially, I suppose it's a dangerous move. It's got some strategic justification, even though you could argue, is it like releasing the central tension? Is it releasing the tension basically? That expression, I don't know if many of you have heard that, releasing the tension in the centre. And it's not even with tempo. There's not even a bishop on d3 yet. So the bishop goes to e2. And also, you know, potentially later b3. But at the moment, of course, c3. The bishop b4 prevents that. So, and now an aggressive move again, g5. So this looks crazy. Very forceful stuff from black. Knight e4. There's a sort of a clinicalness about the forcing sequence here. You know, g5 then knight e4, because the bishop over here is not supporting c3. Yeah, you see this sometimes, that c3 is an early target. So rook c1, and even more pressure now is piled up on c3 just from the opening. Queen a5. Okay, so white plays knight e5, offering a pawn, which should in theory give I would have been pleased with white's position, because snatching this pawn seems to violate, you know, fundamental principles if black's going to snatch the pawn. But black's not aiming to win the pawn. Black takes the knight, but can't take here anyway because you know, queen d2, and knight c6. But white now, you know, has the two bishops. This bishop is potentially a dangerous bishop. So it seems a bit of a risk that black's taking, and what the trump cards black is going to generate from this risk, I'm not completely clear at this point. So both sides now castle, and of course black's got a slightly weakened and airy king position without the dark square bishop. Bishop f3 was played here. Interesting. I wonder if there are other options. I suppose, you know, black is putting white under pressure on c3 here. Oh, sorry, the chess view on live stream saying c4 is Capablanca's strategic idea when he tried and had good success with many top players at this time. Right. But in that particular position, in that exact position, looks a bit strange. So bishop f3, I mean, I would have thought a plan of, you know, f3 and e4 just to undermine this chain. but that would sort of invite double pawns and double pawns here. Knight e5 would also, so that would be a disaster. Knight g3 to play f3, I guess. So this is difficult to do something about. So bishop f3 might be one of the better moves. Black takes on g3 anyway and doubles the pawns here. So we've got two sets of double pawns. Carnage, pawn structure, isolated, isolated, double, double, away from the centre as well. So actually white's pawn structure is a total wreck. However, white has potential for e4 to dissolve the double pawns. Queen d4, frontal pressure against d5, b-file pressure one day if this queen wasn't on these two. So I don't know, complex position. Bishop e6 was played. There's also of course the f-file pressure, dynamics of the f-file. Bishop h5. It's going to pile on the f-file. f6 is also available for usage. So potentially it's dangerous for black. What does black do? It's as if Yifan's simulating a 1980 computer here. She carries on forcing moves and materialism with queen takes a2. So it's almost as if white's playing against, you know, an old computer like a Spectrum or something programmed to play chess. Just queen takes a2 because the queen's decentralized, and you know, isn't black going to pay the price here? You know, king safety. Well, rook f6, as though there's going to be a piling up on f7, and maybe later rook e6 is going to be dangerous. Also h6 is of course targeted immediately. Now black just plays queen b2, tying the queen down to c1 of course, but leaving h6 to drop. So rook takes h6, but look, we've got decentralized pieces here. What is this bishop doing except for hitting f7? And now this bishop on f5 cuts across the center, actually stops for any rook b1s or rook c2s, cuts across central squares. So this bishop's more central than this one. This rook's out of play. Yeah, and king g7, and black might, you know, use the h file. So things are looking up all of a sudden maybe for black. It's all easy to say in retrospect, of course, all of this. So rook f6, and now bishop e4. Not only is the bishop central, it's also pointing at the white king, justifying the queen on b2. That greedy queen, which snatched cheekily on a2, is now actually relevant to the position again, threatening mate. So what has white done? Has white gone wrong here? This pawn structure isn't the most inspiring pawn structure one could imagine. So bishop f3, bishop d3, dynamic move, offering up d5 now. That isn't taken. I'm sure there's an amazing reason why that isn't taken. Maybe rook d8 followed by bishop e4 or something would be eyeing the king, you know, the g2 and thingy. Rook d8. I think it's too dangerous to take on d5. Shall we try and work it out then? So bishop takes d5. What does black play? Rook d8. Is that the move? I'm sure there were better moves for white before. But would this be the punishment? Say bishop f3 here. Is there a crushing move for black here? Does anyone know? What's the punishment for bishop takes d5? Can anyone guess? Anyone? Surely bishop takes d5 was okay, I'll leave that as an exercise. So in the game actually, for some reason, after bishop d3, white played queen e1. So there must have been some purpose. I guess rook a d8. So should we just go into that again? Okay, look here. Rook here. Bishop f3. What does black play here? Someone's saying a5 with a good ending. Really? Maybe it's like these are prisoners, aren't they? So there's prisoners in the position. The queen's kind of protecting the rook. I guess this pawn is actually quite dangerous here. Blimey, maybe that's it. Okay. So anyway, white played queen e1. After rook a e8. A lot of pawns on the firing line here. Now the takes, now rook e5. Okay, so e4. King comes in, and now there's also the possibility of using the h file. The rook has to move or be protected. And now the rook is pinned, queen b6. Also the queen's of course eyeing, you know, not just the pin across the centre. But it looks as though black's coordination has gone up here. The piece quality seems to be very good for all the pieces. And black is only, in fact, black is also a pawn up with an outside past a pawn. Nice blockade on e5. Yeah, black looks to have done well out of all this. So queen d2. It's not even threatening g5. It's protected. So rook d8. Queen goes meekly to be exchanged off. And now black undermines the centre, f5, because this bishop is a tactical liability. You know, if takes, it's going to be dropped. A humble, you know, queen takes b6, just drifting into a lost ending, it seems, because now this central pawn is surely worth more than what white's just picked up, which was a double pawn, wasn't it? Measly double pawn has been swapped by a major central pawn. So black now is really a clear pawn up, and the central pawn is a bit of a killer, so it gets herded. And now all of a sudden after e2, f1 is now vulnerable. All black has to do is get onto f1 because it's supported by that bishop as well. So this was a total disaster really for white, it seems. I don't know what you guys think. This looks like a disaster game for white right from the opening. After rook d2, now white resigns. I mean, after this there's no defence, is there? Just threatening rook f1. So white resigns here. If there's no defence, the rook f1 here. Just winning material. Well, it's end of game. So let's have a look at that game again in overview and summary. So it was a strange game in some respects, with this like release of central tension, kind of almost. Maybe it's something to bear in mind then as black. It's something to bear in mind with as black to play this, because it avoids the isolated queen's pawn in a radical way. And black by force seems to, you know, fracture more and more pawns here. So we've got isolated pawn fracture as target, and now we've got two sets of double pawns here, which can't be good. The pawn structure is total wreckage, and the kingside attack is nothing really to write home about. It just seems to be I don't know what we can say about this. This is a disaster game for white. Disaster. Just went downhill, that central pawn crashing through. So anyway, let's look at another game from this match. Okay, so this was in round 6. And we have the same two first opening moves. Okay, so knight f3, now d5 actually. So again, this hybrid Nimzo-Indian sort of thing. An innovation from white. Queen a4, that's always good to see. Innovations anyway. Unlike how Kasparov lost to Kramnik in the Brain Games match. Very slight variations. That was really strange to see. But here at least white's trying something different with this queen a4. So different type of position altogether. Different strategy for black. Black's playing it like a sort of now this retreat, supporting a liberating central break e5 to free up this bishop. So queen c2, a6, depriving actually white first of the b5 square, just in case knight b5 would nick this important bishop. Wants to keep that bishop on the diagonal. a3, now e5. So it looks as though black again has got a perfectly comfortable position. Rogozin player, is it Rogozin? Alright, it's very good, isn't it? It looks very good. It looks natural. Look at black's pieces, they all look really good. I think I played against Rossiter in this. He was black ages ago in a quick play. Philip Rossiter, Rogozin, I think he was playing this. Liberating with e5 in the centre. So d takes e5. I think black's equalised actually, and one of the things strategically, if you want a strategic disaster, this is one way to get a strategic disaster, is to play the move f4. I hate to be too critical, but I can't believe this. Look, f4, unless white really knows that these bishops are going to be really good, that's one trump card that white could have. Okay, it's easy to say in retrospect, but what about this e4 square, you know, and this diagonal? If black gets on this diagonal, then, you know, this is going to be a big grip coming up. So black is not afraid to give up the dark square bishop, and basically starts overprotecting the e4 square. So queen e7, and white lets that go, gambit style. Doesn't want to play passively in this game, so makes it into a gambit. Okay. Now, if it's not accepted, then you know, I guess, you know, rook e1 and e4, and these bishops are really good, pointing at black quite dangerously. But anyway, the pawn is taken. Okay. Queen b6. So that's it looks again a bit ambitious, this play from black, provocative kind of play. So f5. But black can still try and overprotect e4, you know, with this maneuver and cut across the diagonal. So bishop d7, bishop b4, the rook moves, rook a d1, and in fact not bishop c6 here, but actually queen c6, queen c6. So for the moment, maybe b5, you know, to try and get the queens off. So queen b3 avoids that and points at f7. So it looks as though quite a bit of pressure. The ingenious thing here, I think, well, black actually just makes a sacrifice, counter sacrifice here. Yifan just moves the king. Seems like a nice idea to try and decentralize white again. Rook c1 threatening discovery, but so the queen moves out of the way, and now white takes on f7. So again we get okay, an equal on material position with white having the bishop pair, but does black have better central control? Rook e5 now hitting f5, bishop c3, offering also the exchange of queens, and that's accepted. Rook e3. So black has nice possession of the e file, can reinforce possession of the e file, so that might be black's trump card. I'm not sure about white's two bishops here, because this bishop's got a fantastic diagonal here going for it. What do you guys think is going on here? Would you prefer white or black in this particular position? So if I've spelled out the trump cards for white, the bishop pair, black's got the e file. Which side do you prefer? Black's got the possibility of bishop c6 with a nice central light square bishop. Who do you prefer here, white or black? Out of interest. Just if you want to just shout out white or black. Anyone? You like the queenside majority. I didn't even notice that. Another trump card for black is the queenside pawn majority. White has a potential majority, but it's difficult to use the G pawn because of this bishop on the diagonal. Ironmus reckons white is better on okay. Alright, okay. So bishop c4 is played. Okay. Black celebrates possession of the e file. Bishop's kicks the rook. Bishop a2, rook e2. More rook attacks. Bishop c4 again, rook attacking another rook. Finally, the rooks. No, more rook attacks. Bishop c5. This is a fun game, isn't it? Okay, another rook attack. We've had about 8 rook attacks in a row now. So the rooks are finally white gives the rooks a break. Just plays bishop a2. Okay. So bishop c6, and there's an ominous idea that black has more central control here, and g2 looks as though that's on the firing line. Rook g1 doesn't look like a move playing for a win. Rook g1. In fact, it doesn't give black the king. You know, you could imagine mates. You know, if the bishop wasn't there, that'd be a nice smothered mate. Rook e2. After bishop d4, white's just fallen to bits. I think this was time pressure before move 40. Losing f5 doesn't look particularly like the best idea. So bishop c4, rook d2. Now that it's the bishops being attacked all the time, but now this rook does not need to move here. Clever move from black. I wonder if you can guess it. If I give you 10 seconds starting from now, so this is approaching move 40. Black's got a very ideal. The team's working together well. What did black play here? So 10 seconds starting from now. What would you play here? Right. So someone said knight g4, Geopert, Mad Teapot, knight g4. Knight g4 might be a playable move. There's knight g4, knight e4. Same idea. To smother, you know, the smothered mate idea. Unpleasant. So the king has to be given an escape square. It's given g1. Unfortunately, this runs into something horrible. Yes, it runs into something horrible here. A neat combination. So I wonder if you can spot the next move if I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Anyone? Not rook takes g2. Ah, someone spotted it. Okay. Okay. Yes. Right. Some of you have spotted it. So knight g3 check. Forcing move. Docking computer on, looking at all the forcing moves. Once you get a great position, look for the kill. And looking at forcing moves may be part of that. And it just wins, doesn't it? Because check. And white resigns here because it's mating. Because look, king g1 is absolutely forced. What will black play here? Just rook takes g2 check. And then it would be like, mate. Ouch. White fell to bits there. It's a bit of a shame. Let's have a look in overview and summary at this game. So another bit of it seems black is aiming for greater central control of the minor pieces. From the style of both players here, it seems black is playing a materialistic, provocative style, which later sort of grasps the centre. you know, maybe a bit like Coulson actually. He seems to have a very strong intuition for minor piece central control, a bit more than other players, just at a very high level. Just basic things like central control, you know, make a big difference. There was a period in this game, all these rook attacks, which were a bit tedious, and then finally, you know, white just totally cracked here, just dropping f5, and then the end of the game. This rook g1 is just terrible. I mean, easy to say, but there was some threats brewing up here. You know, rook e2, rook g4, knight, you know, maybe other threats. So this just is a disaster. So rook e2, also hitting b2. So that was like defended with that move actually. But of course f5 is dropping anyway. And combination time, knockout blow, knight g3 check. So, okay, let's have a look at another game. Third decisive game from this match. This is a bit of a long one. 97 moves. I'm not going to go into too much detail about most of these moves. So Yifan playing white. She plays e4, and we have a like Roy Lopez territory. Bishop e7. It all looks very respectable for black, but when I play this, I worry, you know, where's the counterplay that I'm going to generate later? It looks solid, but I think solid sometimes leads to passive, whilst risky sometimes leads to aggressive. When you play a solid opening, you've got to make sure you've got like some sort of aggression sometimes, rather than sort of be ground down. I don't think Humpy did win a single game in this match, by the way. I'm afraid it was a one-sided match. So anyway, as white, so d5 closing the position a bit. Now knight f to h2. So this might make way for, I don't know, f4. No, black's always got e5 control if f4 is ever considered. So what's going on here? Bishop g5. Okay, white's pouncing on the d5 square with d takes c6. So this looks like it could have come maybe from a Sicilian. We've got a semi-open Sicilian e-file. We've got a trade of the d pawn. So it's almost Sicilian kind of transposition. Well, sort of. So knight g3. So white takes on f6, undermining d5. Knight h5. Okay, more pressure on the light squares, controlling also like d5 anyway, protecting e4. Pressure potentially over here. Bishop g5. Now white carries on pounding on the d5 square, rook ad1. So look at this overprotection of these guys, all on d5. It's overprotecting a central key point. Backward pawn. Knight g4. Where are these knights heading? This knight could be heading like this. Again on d5 and also f5. Knight e3, and in fact black takes off. Bishop takes e3, so black loses the bishop here. Of course, those of you following on YouTube might think this is a bit similar to something I've posted recently. In one of the computer games, black gave up the bishop pair with bishop e3, but here it's more justified. Doesn't want white to have an iron grip on d5. But black is passive here. White's still got strategic control of two key central squares. It's nearly strategic crush label. You know, strategic crush, you know, key central squares are being dominated by one side here. Black's pieces are also passive behind this backward pawn. Okay, so g6. Is there a faint hope of counterplay one day? Maybe something like knight g7 and later f5 when this bishop isn't on f7. It's a long way away. Black plays energetically now with h5. Wow. But it's weakening the king position a bit. In fact, queen h6 is played. Knight f4. The knight's challenged. Queen f6. White just takes on f4. E takes. And in fact, this queen's actually quite good for f4, and this rook can now come in, and it does. Rook d3. Whoops. Rook d3, and potentially, you know, this pawn's in trouble. All of a sudden, the pawn, poor pawn, is in trouble. There's no g5 because, you know, obviously the queen takes. Pawn's dropping. So it's like a pawn sack. White didn't exchange queens here. Maybe black has some chance with d5 if white exchanged queens. So d5's got to be kept under lock and key. So queen g5 does that. Because maybe now d5 can be answered with e5, you know, with the queen supporting e5. So rook e5, attacking the queen. Queen drops back. Rook d e7. Is there some counter pressure? Well, rook d1 just targeting d6 now in exchange for e4. g5. Some aggression. White plays just rook f5, threatening rook g5. So that has to be answered. No, it's not actually threatening because the rook's... Sorry, there's no real threat here. We have some simplification now. Rooks come off. In fact, queens come off. So we've got this ending position. The start of the end game. So white's a pawn up still. Weak pawn. I don't know, the king can come to the centre. But maybe black's got a chance. I don't know. King f7. Bishop d1. Annoyingly, these pawns are also vulnerable. This h5 is now vulnerable. Forced forward. Undoubling white's pawns. So white's getting a clearer extra pawn all of a sudden. And now again targeting h4. So white's actually got the superior pawn structure. Two main pawn islands. Black's got, you know, 3 islands and isolated pawns, and this h4 is a bit of a liability. So white stands more comfortable in this ending, and it's a bit of a grind now. It's a technique grind actually. Bishop f3. So we get this rook and pawn ending where white now is forcibly going up 2 pawns, so it's technique here is shown. So 2 pawns up, and white is content actually soon to sacrifice b2 and just herd the g and h pawns now. So these pawns get swapped off, and this is enough of course to win. This is just technique for these players. It's just technique. Black could have resigned. I don't know why black played on and on. So black played on and on, just, I don't know. So technique, yeah. Okay, so 97 moves. So yeah, that puts so Yifan became she defended her title successfully, Yifan Hou. So congratulations to her. So okay, let's go on to the World Computer Championship now. Okay. So in the World Computer Championship, in some ways, computer versus computer games can be quite interesting nowadays. And there's a lot of controversy around the World Computer Championship because Rybka wasn't allowed in. because it was claimed to be not that original, and being original is one of the requirements of entry. So as it turned out, Junior won the event. So the winner, Junior, and this is one of the better games of Junior, when it was playing the Baron. So I think this is in round 6. So wow. So what is it about computer games which seem, I don't know, in the back of my mind they become interesting sometimes. I think we're terrified usually to play engine abusers online, and to see computers versus computers is I don't know, some sort of weird sort of entertainment, because you're witnessing very high level precision chess, high level precision engineering, you know, even from the weaker engines. Of course Ribka and Houdini might be able to thrash Junior, but Junior, okay, might be quite good as well. So here, so e4, and to encourage the brute force of engines, the sharper openings are often better. The more sharper tactical openings leverage the kind of the mechanisms that engines use, such as alpha beta pruning, which has been around for about 30 years. So basically this is a systematic, you know, evaluation of different candidate moves, returning the best possible values, basically. Before alpha beta pruning, the primitive, you know, minimax used to be used, but alpha beta pruning was a major innovation, and now engines use all sorts of major innovations to be competitive with each other. White has a comfortable position here, and bit of positional move now, a4, clamping down on b5. So it's a nice position for white. h3. I think Karpov might have played this system at some point. So white's content with a slight superiority of central control sometimes. You know, these two pawns in the centre to be kind of celebrated somehow. Knight a6, bishop f4, as though e5 might be one day a threat, but at the moment you don't want to give up d5 square, especially if this guy is coming to d5. So knight b4. Okay, white plays now queen d2, so that echoes you know, exchanging off bishops, weaken the dark squares, but of course c2 is a problem because of this pesky knight. Okay, so queen b6 was played. Okay, queen b6. So bishop h6, slight weakening of black's king is about to happen. Okay, now an incredible looking move, right? White wants to intensify the kingside attack here. I wonder if you can spot the next move. Now in the Roy Lopez, what is a good manoeuvre? It's often knight e2 to g3. I'll give you a clue. Often getting a knight here to go into these two squares is often a key winning manoeuvre in the Roy Lopez, isn't it? So what move would assist white playing that sort of plan? And remember, c2 is under pressure. So can you guess what white's next move here was? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Anyone? Anyone guess? Bishop d3 was a guess. Okay, wasn't bishop d3. Okay, it's an unusual looking move. It's one of the moves I commented on actually at Chess Games Common. Someone was saying it's a weird looking move. Bishop, you know, d3 does support c2, but there's another way of supporting c2 less committally, maybe bishop d1, without allowing knight takes d3. So now, you know, this is possible, you know, to go for this sort of attack, hack attack. So rook ad8 for some reason. It's sort of prophylaxis, I suppose, because if e5 you can take and then you're on the queen. Mysterious rook move, rook ad8. So rook e1. Now rook fe8, another mysterious rook move. Now Nimzovich might have called them mysterious, but in the engine's hands, the engine is not really following my system. It's just thinking that rook fe8 maybe, you know, create some sort of tactical vulnerability if white does something. But so it's a non-plan, non-entity type of move. So queen e3, which gets out of the way of the rook. So maybe e5 might be more on the card soon. But this also prompts now this idea for black to play bishop c4, which bishop c4 is in a way strategically committal, because once you lose a bishop of a certain colour, you are committed to losing a grip on a certain colour complex. Now if the bishop's being kicked to a6, white now has the option of exchanging off in the future the light square bishop, and thus weakening light squares in black's position. The whole light square colour complex is being weakened if white can forcibly get rid of the light square bishop in the future. But for the moment he's content with weakening the dark squares. And now rook c1 means now the bishop's now free for bishop e2 to forcibly get rid of the light square bishops. So knight d7, and that actually happens now. So it's almost computer strategic chess. Get rid of the light square bishops. e5. But remember, we've got potential weaknesses here on the dark squares without the dark square bishop. So gets rid of the light square bishop as well. And now finally we're prepared for this attacking knight maneuver, which is what you see a lot in the Royal Lepers and in other openings. So the knight's not really doing anything on c3. It's not really aggressive. You want this knight to go and attack the king. So this is one way of doing it. So knight e2. So f6, which looks solid enough. You know, the strong pointing e5 with a lot of pieces. Knight g3, and it looks as though is black's king position solid or not here. Just because these knights are here, what damage can they possibly do to the king and the castle position here? Player writes, if the kingside dark squares are weak and the kingside light squares are weak, how long will the black king live? Well, it depends how combinatory, doesn't it, the player is to be able to exploit these subtle weaknesses. c5, inviting the closing of the position. So is d5 a temptation? Actually, white decides not to play d5 because, you know, maybe c4 is dangerous. White actually takes on e5, and after d takes e, preserves the d file pressure. Okay, queen c6, and now I move eyeing up dark square weaknesses. Knight h2, because actually knight g4 now would facilitate queen h6. So all of a sudden dark square weaknesses are coming into evidence. So black decides to do something about knight g4 and plays a very committal pawn move. Now here is the thing about pawn moves. Pawns are a kind of property of chess that pawns cannot go backwards. So whilst an engine might calculate to a certain depth that this next move is okay, h5, the pawn can never go backwards. So if it's found out at a later depth this was actually a wrong move, the pawn cannot be retracted. So encouraging pawn weaknesses from engines is one way for one engine to beat another. It's a very committal move, h5. The knight simply goes back and damage has already been done, provoked h5. Now why is that damage done? Because actually you know, g6 is a bit more vulnerable now, because that pawn is not supporting that pawn. Okay, so subtle weaknesses have been created. The knight's now evicted finally from c3. Okay, it doesn't look like an amazing spot, but at given time, it can go here to here, and maybe here, given time. But is it going to be given time? No. The next move is very sharp. Knight h4. And all of a sudden, there seems to be a tactical dynamic threat of sacrificing a knight. And this is almost a thematic sacrifice sometimes in the Roy Lopez. It's Kasparov's favourite position for a knight on f5. So maybe sacrificing a knight to get to f5 is not a bad idea. The queen and knight is often a very good combination anyway for attacking the black king. Knight e6. And then here it comes, this sacrifice, knight h5 check. Or is it? It's not even taken. It's calculated as too dangerous to take this knight here. The king just sidesteps with king f7. So we have here a very dangerous position. Or is it? So white takes on d8 and invades with the queen, prompting the knight to be really taken now, because otherwise, you know, this is too damaging, this queen infiltration. The knight has to be taken now. So pawn for knight, one pawn, but now this pawn's also weak, so it's going to be two pawns, potentially. Rook e1, which not only defends the e4 pawn, but also no rook left later, could be dangerous. So with this knight out of the game, is there compensation? The sacrifice wasn't done on intuition though, it was done on brutal like calculation. It wasn't like a Tau-like sacrifice. Bengo Gamta writes, didn't the Topolov Allen match have the same sort of idea in one game, I think? I think a lot of games often have the knight f5 sacrifice. It's almost a thematic attacking sacrificial idea, which I think you can sometimes use in your own games. You know, the classic manoeuvre in the Roy Lopez, knight f1 to g3, eyes f5, doesn't it? But when, you know, it's a classic knight manoeuvre, isn't it, to get a knight to f5. Okay, so this knight on f5, is it as good as Kasparov, you know, likes? He likes his knights on f5. It is iron key squares. The black king's going to have difficulty making a run for it here. c4. So maybe at least, you know, this knight can centralise and attack things. Losing another pawn, no. Check. Another pawn. 3 pawns. We're almost getting the material back. 3 pawns for the knight now. 3, 4, 7 pawns for white. 3 pawns for the knight. 4 pawns for the knight. But these are double pawns. But there's an outside pass pawn now. Whoops. Outside pass pawn danger. h4. So there's no even need to try and mate the king yet. The king's just stopped from touring across the board. And this pawn is just a menace. Queen takes a4, losing one of the extra pawns. But the pawn makes its way to h5 now, sacrificing yet another pawn. 2 steps away now from queening, but also on h6 it supports knight g7 as well. It's a hook for knight g7s, and another pawn is given up. So white's given up 3 pawns in a row there spectacularly for the rook lift now with tempo. After queen c4, now white simply plays rook f3, and even though a piece down, there are some ominous threats all of a sudden generated by this battery of rook and queen on f8 and knight g7's possibility. And in fact, black, or the engine operator, resigned on behalf of the engine here. I wonder if we can work out why black resigned here. Let's try and work out why. Let's say knight takes e4. Is that a legal move? Knight takes e4. What would white's play here? What's White's winning move here? Anyone? I think knight g7 looks pretty good. If knight takes, queen takes his mate. If rook takes hg. Oh, people are saying queen h8. Have I got this wrong? Is that a terrible move, knight g7? It probably loses, doesn't it? So people are saying queen h8. That looks pretty good as well, actually. So if knight f8, we've got knight d6 check, haven't we? Or something. Knight g7. It looks pretty bad, this sort of position. Maybe h7 here. So that was interesting, wasn't it? So the initial knight sack now leading to the sacrifice of 3 pawns in a row. So this h-pawn marching, sacrificing all of the pawns on the queen's side. 1, 2, 3. To get this battery. Once the battery is established, the fun begins. So... is everyone convinced there's no defence here? I'll suggest another defensive move. I don't know. If rook f7, that fells to knight d6. Knight f8 or queen f8. No, there isn't queen f8. Knight f8. Probably just knight g7. Does anyone have a defensive idea that you want to test? Who would like to test the defensive move? Anyone? Or are you convinced this is totally like lost for black? No defensive move for anyone? If there's no defensive move, we can just review the game and try and make use of maybe such a thematic knight sacrifice in our own games. Test queen c1. Okay. Check. King must move. Now what? Should we try queen g5? Queen g5. I think knight g7 check. Rook takes. No, I've gone wrong here. Have I? Whoops, not knight g7 check. What happens after queen g5 here? Queen h8. Right. So, say the knight goes back. Knight d6 check. What? What in this position? Knight. What would you play here after knight f8? Knight g7 check. Someone's saying. Knight g7. King moves. I think just rook, yeah, and then knight. Okay, so that looks crushing, yeah. In fact, here I think there's check and rook takes. You know, get this position. Yeah. So that's all pretty crushing, yeah. Wow. All right. So let's go back just to see how that happened. So in overview and summary. It was started off a bit quietly, but then this interesting bishop d1 happened. So it made way for an attacking maneuver. Got rid of both of black's bishops. So both light and dark squares potentially a bit more vulnerable. Prompted this h5 very committal move, pawn move. So f5 is a bit more vulnerable for a knight sack, which was made use of, and forcibly asking black to take the knight. So we go into that position, which is the free pawns are sacrificed. Sorry, someone's saying, oh, have I blundered? Oh dear. What are we saying here? Check. Was there a blunder? Sorry. Knight g7. No, we're saying queen h8 here. Knight g7. You say rook c8 check is losing, Ironmus. Is rook c8 check losing? I suppose it is to queen. There isn't queen h5, queen h4 and rook d1. Yeah. Alright, there must be a move here actually, so forget rook c8 and rook c5, pardon me. So queen h4 is on the cards. Was this the right sequence? If we go back here, queen takes f8 is a lot better. Sorry, queen h8 check, knight f8. Anyone? Take with the queen is better. Queen takes f8. What, here? This one. Oh dear, it's too complicated. So someone wants to say in this position, queen takes e5. Knight g7 check first. Knight g7. All right, let's try knight g7 again. So rook takes. Queen takes f8. Oh, I'm actually lost in your suggestions. So if you want to get the PGN for this and check for yourself, queen h8 check first, then queen takes f8 after knight f8. Right, I've lost track of where that is. Sorry, I'm sorry. Look, okay, look, we'll try queen h8 check. We'll just go into this one last time. Knight f8. Does anyone have a move here? Sorry, no, after knight f8. Is there a win here? Knight g7. Okay. Yes. This looks clear enough. Because of f8. Right. Good. Okay, let's go on to the next game. Yes, this is very clear. Great. We've reached clarity. Okay, forget that other variation, that loss for white. Right. So, we'll go on to another win by Junior. Okay, as black. Okay, so this was against Boot. against Junior. By the way, ChessBase distribute these major engines, Junior, Hierarchs. ChessBase is the distributor for these engines. So knight f3, and now knight f6. We have an English opening. So positional, and white stretches out on the queen side soon. So rook b1. This is a standard plan to sort of expand on the queen side. Okay, so clamping down on b4 for the moment. Okay, so white is enjoying some space advantage, it seems. Now a sort of computer-like defensive move, rook b8. Well, it sort of defends b7 against b5s. Yeah, it's not going to be vulnerable to bishop b7, I expect. So knight e7, queen d7. So again, this strategy of trying to weaken the light squares around the king. So with bishop h3. So this is familiar, isn't it? Just with black trying to attack white. So you learn all about colour complexes and the attack in these two games. So invading, getting a light square attack soon. h5. Now it takes knight f5, which implies the knight's coming, maybe to d4 one day, potentially. In fact, after this next move, it does come to d4. It's invited, and it does play knight d4. So we have these double pawns, but black has got this e5 square to make use of. So reinforces d4. And if takes, then the rook's attacking the queen. So bishop c1. Now a fight on the a file. Rook a8. Rook a2. Now a strange kind of solid move, forgetting the king side for the moment. Rook f b8. So what's going on here? Rook fb8. You'd thought black's trying to play on the king side, but actually rook fb8. Okay, what are the rooks doing here? Bishop f4. Now knight g4. So the knight's heading maybe for e5. In fact, it does go to e5. Bishop e5. Bishop e5. Bishop goes back. Now it seems white's playing recklessly f5, weakening e5 again, and black's got the dark square bishop. So now there's some dynamism actually demonstrated by Junior to really celebrate this bishop. This next move seems to be a dynamic positional pawn sack. h4, just offering a pawn up to weaken white's king position. Sorry, I seem to have lost the connection on the Play Chess server just then. Pardon me. Are you all there still on the Play Chess server? Sorry, I seem to have lost connection there for a moment. I hope everything's okay. You may have to press play. Can anyone hear anything? Sorry. Okay. So G takes h4. Okay. Positional sack. Queen d8. Look, queen's coming in. Ouch. On the dark squares. So pawn sacrifice. White tries to defend. But now bishop e5, forcing the rook to g4. Queen f6. So what's happened here? And what about h5? Isn't h5 dangerous? Strange. h5 is played, and black simply plays king h7. So not only sacrificing one pawn, but also now offering another. So, you know, isn't h3, but maybe king g7, you know, and then rook f8, and look at this. So rook takes, and in fact the rook took on g6, attacking the queen. Queen f7, and there's still a menacing threat now of rook f8. Look at all these squares. The queen's cut off because of this pawn here. It's cut off. So black's also got rook a1 for f1. So black has sacrificed 2 pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 pawns down, but with a vicious attack. Is the white queen too slow to get back in? You know, queen d1, rook f8 maybe. Wow. So knight g3, and now black simply snaps off the knight. And here, white resigned. So it seems that trump card, which black got of the bishop versus knight, the engine managed to, you know, use major tactics to really explode that trump card it had. You know, we wouldn't think, wow, we've got the bishop versus knight, how to sack 2 pawns now, or maybe some of us would. But yeah, bishop versus knight and then sacking 2 pawns. Let's have a look at that again. Vicious attack. Now, if here, you know, if rook takes, you know, rook f8 looks strong, and I think this is fairly winning. Either which one's stronger? Probably this one's stronger, because it's threatening queen f2 and queen f1. Or is queen d1 defense? Is the other one stronger? Actually, check here is winning the rook. Whoops. Okay, well, that's one variation anyway. So let's have a look at that game. So it seems once black grabbed the bishop, that was an amazing thing that happened after. It seems also black wasn't even interested in the king side for a moment. Played these aggressive moves initially, then switched both rooks in a non-human-like way to a8 and b8. What was all that about? Look at the rooks here. You can, you know, it's like a disinterest in the king, almost like provocation. And now white didn't sense, maybe with these rooks over here, is white sensing any danger for the king? Probably not. So white started moving pawns now on the king side without a sense of danger, because you know, what are the rooks doing over here? So f5 weakening dark squares, and now this is it. Everything comes back to attack the king all of a sudden. This sense of danger seemed to be, you know, white was lulled into a false sense of security. Would you say? A false sense of security here for white. And now all of a sudden, 2 pawn sacrifices. 1 and another one coming up. 2 coming up. 2 pawn sacks. And all of a sudden, these rooks are ready to spring back into action against the white king. And it's all of a sudden gone. A highly technical waiting move, Benko Gambito writes. Rook at fb8. It did seem to, you know, encourage white to start flinging the pawns on the king side when black had the dangerous dark square bishop. I think the technical aspect of any of these moves, it's all based on brute force, isn't it? Okay, it's 1 hour 15. I did have another game in theory to have a look at. Another junior game. Shall we have a quick look at one more game? Since a few of you are still around, shall we have a look at one more game? Yeah. Okay. One more game from junior. Oh, that's Humpy versus Hou. Whoops, wrong game. Sorry. Oh dear. What have I done? Rookie versus junior. Okay. So e4 from rookie. We have a Sicilian. Okay. Knight c6, the classical Sicilian. d6. And now white plays knight takes c6, which usually you don't really want to increase the number of central pawns the opponent has. So black's got potentially, trump cards in the centre and also B file pressure potentially. Queen d3. Black castles. Rook d1 and now d5. So is this bishop going to be bad? If white can get a sort of blockade on these dark squares, maybe this bishop is not going to be that good. Queen g3. Knight goes to d7. Rook b1. Looks like passive game for white. This does look like the old computer type moves. Pointless. Very mysterious rook move. Seems to be a feature of a lot of engine games. They just move rooks in a seemingly pointless manner. So here, rook b1. I mean, you wouldn't really usually, want to play a move like rook b1. I suppose you could call it advanced prophylaxis, like Petrosian type prophylaxis against something, in the future. Okay, so a5, h3, and now f5, challenging white's central pawn and trying to get maybe some f file pressure. But e takes f, so the central pawns of white have been wiped out, and black has potential dynamism now. f2. Maybe even queen b6 is going to be useful. Bishop h6. Threatening mate. It's parried. And now white tries to win the exchange. Bishop g4. And black plays a positional exchange sack pretty soon, actually. Bishop d6, attacking the queen. And now rook f6, attacking the bishop. Rook g6, putting the rook in a place it doesn't look too good, but it's threatening rook takes g5 because of that pin, so that's supported. But now more central fight, e5, which is amazing actually. e5, so look at these central pawns, central pawn mobility. If these pawns can crash through, that would be really good. But isn't white winning the exchange? Where's the rook moving? It actually is offering up the exchange after rook f6. So we have here a strange position, the exchange down, but the central pawn mobility has just increased. And also again, there's a possibility of attacking the queen. The bishop is blocked in by its own pawn. This pawn might be a target in the future. It's very passive now on h3. So the exchange down. Which side do you prefer here? Do you like black here? Does anyone like black here? Who do you think's winning this in this position? So you're the exchange down, but you have greater central control. Do you think black stands better? Anyone? Who prefers white? Who prefers black? Anyone? Black. Someone writes, black is awesome. Okay. Someone writes, black's better. Player writes, I don't think black's better. Okay. Will it be downhill for white? So queen e7, and now pawn is pushed, and immediately, actually, there's a threat of queen e5. Do you change your mind, player? Look, where's the dark square bishop? Player, I think you're going to change your mind pretty soon because there's an ominous threat of queen e5. That's pretty dangerous, isn't it? Using this centre to get a key central square as a basis for the attack. It's a major perk of these pawns in the centre. Knight e2 trying to defend. Bishop a6 cutting, the king off potentially. Now more pushing e3. So again, there still remains this idea of queen e5, but maybe knight f3 to protect h2. Knight e6. e2 attacking the rook. Bishop e5. Bishop e5. And white decided here to play queen f2. I don't know why exactly. Why wouldn't the rook go back here? Does anyone know why rook d2? I think if knight... Why not knight takes c6? The knight can't take on c6. But if rook d2, what happens here? Knight e4. Ah. And there's also this idea of check is dangerous. Ouch, for knight g3s, So white decided in this position here to give up the exchange, queen f2, which doesn't look particularly hot. Knight e4 gives up the exchange, getting very complicated. So not even the exchange down anymore. Rook e1, and now the queen comes to b4, hitting e1, b2. So there's a threat of e3 to decoy the queen away from e1. So white gives up yet another exchange as well. White plays rook takes e2. So it actually ends up being the exchange down now. Player writes, shouldn't white have indeed gotten the e2 pawn when he gave back the exchange? No idea. Sorry. So black goes up the exchange, and a pawn takes that pawn. Bishop g3 threatens nasties now on the back row because the bishop's cutting off the king. King makes a run for it. Check. Queen b2 threatening mate. That's parried. But the exchange up now just plays rook b8. Doesn't mind the exchange of queens. h5. Queen's also defending here. So a4. And now white decides to take the queen off. And after rook takes b2, white resigned, actually. I think this spells the end, this pawn, once this pawn goes. So white resigned here. So another very dynamic game from Junior. So Junior's playing a bit like Tao, one could say. Would you say that? Junior's a bit like Tao or Petrosian. if we look at what happened in this game in overview and summary, black seemed to use the extra central control trump card, and by making use of an exchange sack, emphasized that trump card of greater central control. So an exchange sacrifice here, which robbed white of the better bishop and gave black now prospects for direct attacking operations like queen e5. And basically, I don't know, it seems after e2 there were too many threats here, like knight e4 and queen a7. So white started giving back material with queen f2. Started giving back material, in fact went down the exchange, and the game was off soon. End of game here. So anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week. It's been nearly like 1.5 hours. I hope you've enjoyed this week's thing. I'm not doing this next week because I'm in the London Classic. So maybe see you in 2 weeks' time. Okay, so I'll put this on YouTube anyway, this video. Hope you got something from it. So thanks very much, and see you in about 2 weeks' time. Okay, and look out for stuff on YouTube.com King's Crusher. I might upload videos of people from there and stuff. Okay, thanks very much.